Dinner's off. We're not getting together after all. 7 words. No, Mom. No, sorry. No explanation. Just a text. Sent at 5:13 p.m. 47 minutes before the reservation I had made. A table for 6. Prepaid. With my card. I stood across the street from the restaurant, fingers cold inside my gloves. Through the window I could see them. My son Michael laughing, leaning close to Jenna, his wife. My grandson Dylan waving his fork in the air mid-story. They were already eating. Napkins in laps. Wine glasses lifted. Like a scene from a commercial selling joy. The waiter brought the bill. I watched as Michael nodded. That same nod he used to give when he was 5, and I offered him ice cream. Calm. Confident. Expectant. Then he pulled out a credit card, mine. The one I'd used the night before to confirm the booking. The charge had already hit my account. I didn't go in. I didn't knock on the glass. I didn't text back, didn't write why. Or how could you? I just stood there. It was warm inside. Cozy. Out here a wind twisted between storefronts. A woman walked past, dragging a little boy in a red jacket. He glanced at me curiously. I looked down. That's when it hit me. I had paid for their warmth to stand out here in the cold. A man bumped my shoulder as he passed. Muttered an apology without turning around. Life moved on. Everything did except me. I turned away. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't the weather. Not exactly. It was that kind of trembling that starts when the truth settles in your bones but your brain still clings to maybe. At the trash can outside the parking garage, I dropped the gift box, sapphire brooch, passed from my mother to me. I had planned to give it to Jenna tonight. A welcome to the family. A link in the chain of women who endured, gave, stayed. How absurd that feels now. I ordered a rideshare. The driver, a young guy in a baseball cap, asked, "Did the place suck or something?" I smiled. "No. I just lost my appetite for dining with people who know how to forget." He didn't say anything. Just turned the radio down a little. I caught my reflection in the window. I didn't look sad. I looked erased. Like a page torn out of a book no one was reading anyway. You don't die when your children stop loving you. You die when they pretend you were never invited. And still I didn't cry. Mothers aren't deleted. We are overwritten. And sometimes, I didn't leave. I just stopped returning. That morning I ironed my blouse twice. The first time just to smooth the sleeves. The second because I wanted it perfect. Light blue with a scalloped collar. Michael always said it made me look put together. I chose it carefully, like someone dressing for an interview they still believe they might get. I packed the small box with the sapphire brooch, my mother's, into a soft velvet pouch. I even wiped the glass with a tissue, though no one would see it. Jenna liked gifts with stories. I imagined her smile when I told her how my mother wore it to her anniversary dinner in 1969. I imagined Dylan asking if sapphires were real and me saying, "Just like love. If it lasts, it's real." It was supposed to be a celebration. Michael had texted 3 days ago. Thinking family dinner at Lucas? Just us. Sunday night. Just us. That phrase still sat heavy in my chest, like a meal gone cold before anyone took the first bite. I confirmed the reservation, prepaid as a surprise. I even added dessert. Jenna loved tiramisu. Dylan liked anything with sprinkles. I remembered every detail because that's what mothers do. We keep track of the small things no one else remembers. At 11:30 a.m., I went out to get my hair done. Just a light blowout. I told Linda, the stylist, something soft. Casual but not too casual. "You got a date," she teased. "Dinner with my family," I said. Linda smiled. "Sounds like a good one." I nodded, not knowing that hours later I'd be standing on the other side of a window, watching my own chair stay empty. Back home I laid out my coat, slipped a card into my purse. To my daughter-in-law with all my heart. And waited for the clock to crawl toward 6. It was around 4:50 when I started to feel something. Not dread. Just a tightness behind the ribs, like I'd miscounted something small but important. I brushed it off. Then came the message. "Dinner's off." No punctuation. Not even a period. As if it didn't deserve one. I read it once. Then again. Then I did something I can't remember doing in years. I sat down on the floor. Not the couch. The floor. My legs folded under me, coat bunched behind. The box with the brooch still on the table. I sat there for 20 minutes. My knees hurt. My eyes didn't water. That surprised me. Love doesn't always break you. Sometimes it just quietly stops arriving. I changed nothing. I left in the same blouse, the same heels. I went to Luca's anyway. Not because I thought they might show. Because I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to see who I was when no one expected me. That's when I understood. I hadn't been excluded by mistake. I'd been removed on purpose. I wasn't planning to look. I told myself I wouldn't. I'd already seen enough through the restaurant window. The lifted forks, the laughter, the easy way my son slid the check toward the server like it cost him nothing. But curiosity is cruel. It doesn't knock politely. It barges in when the ache's still fresh. I was lying on the motel bed, shoes still on, staring at the ceiling with its coffee-colored water stains, when I opened my phone, just out of reflex, just to scroll, just to feel a little less hollow. And there it was. Jenna's post tagged at Luca's. A photo of the table. Cropped just enough to look tasteful but wide enough to see the wine. The cake. The extra place settings. Family night with my favorites. The caption read. No filters. No remorse. I looked closer. The silver napkin rings I picked out for their wedding were on the table. In the comments someone wrote, "Is that your mother-in-law's brooch on your dress? So vintage." Jenna replied, "It's a loaner." Long story, smiley face. No, it wasn't a loan. It was a gift. Meant to be given that night, hand to hand. Not lifted from a forgotten box by someone who assumed I wouldn't notice it missing. They'd gone into my things. I blinked hard. It wasn't that they forgot to include me. They planned not to. The reservation confirmation I printed the night before was still in my purse. I pulled it out. There in bold. Paid in full. Reservation for 6. Under Elaine Foster. I texted Michael earlier in the week asking if I should bring anything. He replied, "Just you. Just you." That phrase cut deeper now. It wasn't a dinner gone wrong. It was a performance, rehearsed, polished, executed. And the audience of one? Me. On the outside. I remembered the way the hostess had glanced toward me when I stood across the street. She'd looked confused, almost apologetic. She knew. They told the restaurant I wouldn't be coming. They told them before they told me. That's when something shifted. Not in a dramatic way. Not like breaking glass or storming out. It was quieter than that. Like a switch flipped in the back of the mind. They didn't forget me. They erased me. I stared at the phone screen until it dimmed. Then I turned it off. Not silent mode. Not do not disturb. Off. Because if they could stage a dinner with my money and my absence, smiling like I'd never existed, then maybe it was time I agreed with them. Maybe it was time to disappear too. I didn't go home. Not that night. Could've. The motel was only 8 miles from the house. I had a spare toothbrush there. A robe hanging behind the bathroom door. My slippers tucked under the bed. My cat would have meowed when I walked in expecting treats. But I didn't. I walked 2 blocks from the restaurant and checked into the first place I saw. An old brick roadside and called the Pineway. No one asked questions. The man at the desk handed me a room key like I was just another tired woman passing through. Maybe I was. The room smelled faintly of bleach and old pine. A single bed, beige curtains, a dent in the armchair cushion like someone else had sat there thinking too long. I didn't bother unpacking. Instead I sat on the bed, coat still buttoned, and just listened. To the hum of the heater. To the cars passing outside. To the silence that wasn't trying to punish me. Back home, silence had become something sharp. It crept into rooms after conversations stopped. It lingered after Michael left a message unread. After Jenna answered with one-word replies. It filled the spaces where I used to belong. But here, silence was soft. Indifferent but not cruel. I made tea from the free packet on the dresser. Tasted like paper, but it was hot. I drank it slowly. I stared out the window at a parking lot glowing under a flickering street lamp. No one knew where I was. And for the first time in years that felt like safety. The next morning, I woke up without an alarm. My back ached from the mattress, but my head was clear. I walked down to the corner diner. The kind with torn vinyl booths and real waitresses who call you hon. The woman who served me was named Renee. She looked about 50, hair pinned up, lipstick too red for the hour. "You from around here?" she asked as she poured my coffee. "Not anymore," I said. She chuckled. "Good. Around here's not much to be from." I smiled at that. She didn't ask anything else. Just kept refilling my cup. After breakfast, I stepped outside and stood at the curb. I could have called for a ride. I could have gone back, said I just needed air. Blamed it on a headache or bad reception or anything but the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I walked. Block after block, through neighborhoods I didn't know. Letting my legs decide the direction. The wind picked up, tugging at my sleeves. I passed a florist, a bookstore, a nail salon. Normal places full of people not thinking about me. And that, I realized, was the gift. To move through the world unnoticed. Not as an obligation. Not as a burden. Just as someone walking. Choosing. That's when I whispered to no one in particular. They didn't shut the door. I just stopped knocking. I hadn't checked my bank account in a while. Pension hit automatically, bills were on autopay, and I never really spent. When your life shrinks to one room and three voices, there isn't much to buy. But sitting in that motel, with the curtains drawn and my coat still draped over the chair, I decided to log in. Not because I expected anything. Just because I needed to remind myself I still owned something. It took 3 tries to remember the password. My hands were colder than I thought. The first thing I noticed wasn't the balance. It was a transfer. $500 moved 2 days ago. To Michael. The memo line read, "Car expenses." I didn't send it. I scrolled further. 3 more transfers, smaller ones. All within the past month. All labeled things like emergency. School fees. Thanks, Mom. Except I never wrote those memos. Never clicked send. My stomach turned. I opened settings. There it was. An old email Michael set up for me when I got my first smartphone. Linked to my account. Still active. With full permissions. He had access. He'd had it all along. He used my money without asking, without even pretending. He'd already decided what I owed him. I sat there, the screen lighting up my face like some interrogation lamp, and all I could think was, he didn't steal my money. He spent my silence. I changed the password. Then I removed his access. I didn't call him. I didn't even text. There was nothing to ask. Nothing to explain. Later, I walked to a nearby bank branch and stood in line behind a woman arguing about overdraft fees. When it was my turn, I asked to speak with someone about updating account security. The banker was young, polite, efficient. She asked if I wanted to authorize any family members. "No," I said. She looked up. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'm sure." That night, back in the motel, I took out my notebook. I wrote a list. Not groceries. Not errands. Just names. 3 of them. Then I drew a line through the first 2. The third I left blank. 'Cause maybe I didn't need to fill it in right away. The phone rang once. Then stopped. Michael's name flashed, then disappeared. I didn't call back. Instead, I unplugged the motel room lamp. Just to see what it felt like to be the one who turns off the light. And in the dark, I whispered to the silence. "You didn't remove me." I withdrew. It started with a folder. Old worn, the kind you keep because you forget it exists. Inside were documents I hadn't touched in years. Copies of my will, property deeds, an emergency contact sheet from when Dylan was a toddler. Michael's name was everywhere. Executor. Beneficiary. Point of contact. He was the one I trusted with everything. The irony felt like sand in my mouth. I took the folder and walked to the library across from the bus station. They had printers, computers, quiet. The woman at the help desk offered me a smile when I asked about scanning. "You getting your affairs in order?" she said lightly. "Yes," I replied. "It's about time." Afterward, I called the law office that handled my will 12 years ago. I half expected no one to pick up, but a receptionist answered on the 3rd ring. I asked for an appointment. Nothing specific. Just estate updates. They had a slot that afternoon. The office was a converted house, the kind with creaky floors and a bowl of mints by the door. The attorney, Martin Hale, was older than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing things more clearly now. "Elaine Foster," he said, flipping through my old file. "Been a while." "Yes," I said. I'd like to make some changes. He nodded. Anyone new you'd like to include? No, I said. I'd like to remove someone. He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask. I handed him the list. Not a long one. One name in ink with a line drawn straight through it. We spent an hour going over the documents. Property transfers. Financial control. Healthcare proxy. The works. He explained each part gently like he thought I might break. I didn't. By the time I left, I felt something shift. Not anger, not relief. Something cleaner. I passed a young man outside on the sidewalk, arguing with someone on the phone. He looked exhausted. As I stepped around him, I heard him say, "She just cut me off like I don't even matter." I kept walking. At the corner, I threw away the old will. Not ceremoniously. Just dropped it in a public trash can like a grocery receipt. Later that night, back in my motel room, I wrote a letter. Not to Michael. To myself. It started with one line. You are no longer responsible for people who erase you. The letter ended with a list of places I'd always wanted to visit. Not grand ones. Just small things. The Train Museum in Oregon. A bed and breakfast in Asheville. A quiet beach in Maine. For the first time in decades, my future didn't orbit anyone else's needs. It belonged to me. I checked out of the Pineway just after sunrise. The man at the desk asked if everything had been all right with the room. I said yes. That it was quiet. That was all I needed. I didn't have a plan beyond that. Just a bus ticket to somewhere 3 towns over. A name I picked at random off a map taped behind the glass at the station. On the ride, I sat by the window and watched the trees go by in slow motion. I felt like a passenger in my own life for the first time, and strangely it suited me. The town was small. One diner, one antique store, one dusty post office. The kind of place where people still nodded when they passed you on the street. I walked into a cafe called Willow and Birch. Wooden tables, chalkboard menus. A woman behind the counter arranging croissants like they were part of an art exhibit. She glanced up. Coffee. Please, I said. She poured it into a real mug. No paper cup, no plastic lid, and slid it across the counter. You look like someone who just left something behind, she said. I paused. Maybe I did. She didn't push. Just handed me a napkin and said, "Stay as long as you need." I took a seat by the window. Outside, a couple walked a dog. A teenage girl leaned against a bike rack, headphones in, mouthing lyrics only she could hear. And inside, for once, I didn't feel like I was waiting to be needed. I was just present. Half an hour passed. Then an hour. The barista came by again, this time holding a fresh scone. "On the house," she said. "You remind me of someone. My aunt. She disappeared for 2 years once. Said she just needed to learn how her own voice sounded." I nodded. "I think I'm doing the same." She smiled. "Well, if you ask me, you look like someone who finally chose herself." Stuck with me. That line. Not because it was kind, because it was true. Later, I found a room above a florist shop. The landlady, Marcy, gave me a tour herself. Small kitchen, clean sheets, a window that looked out onto a quiet alley. "You're not from around here, are you?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not yet." She nodded slowly. "You're one of those people. The ones who return different." She left me with the key and a small packet of wildflower seeds. "Plant these," she said, "when you're ready." That night, I sat at the little table by the window and wrote a single sentence in my notebook. "I was your background until I disappeared." It didn't feel bitter. Felt like truth. And sometimes, truth is the first real thing you grow after years of living in someone else's version of love. The knock came on a Thursday. Just after noon. I knew it would come eventually. People like Michael don't notice absence right away. They're used to assuming you're just in the other room, or on the other end of a message you'll eventually reply to. But when silence stretches past convenience, it becomes a threat. I didn't open the door right away. Through the peephole I saw his face, drawn, tired, impatient. Like someone who hadn't slept well since the last person in the room stopped forgiving him. I opened the door slowly. He stepped back. "Mom." I said nothing. "I didn't know where you went. Jenna's freaking out. Dylan's been asking." He waited. I didn't fill the space. "I came to get you. We can talk. We should talk." I looked at him for a long time. Not the way you look at someone you miss. The way you look at something you finally see clearly. He ran a hand through his hair. Okay, look, I know the dinner thing was messed up. Jenna thought maybe it'd be easier if I didn't exist? I asked, my voice even. His face fell. It wasn't like that. No, I said. It was exactly like that. Silence again. He hated it. Always did. Used to call it the mom wall. Can we please just go inside? Figure this out? I stepped back, but not to let him in. To close the door. Before I did, I said one thing. Now you know what silence sounds like from the person who always showed up. Click. He didn't knock again. Just stood there for a minute, maybe two, then left. I didn't watch him walk away. I didn't need to. The next morning I went to the hardware store and bought a new lock. Later, I mailed the sapphire brooch, not back to Jenna, but to a consignment shop 2 towns away. Let it become someone else's heirloom. One that might be worn with care instead of entitlement. I threw away the birthday calendar that used to hang on my fridge. Deleted the shared photo album. Removed the emergency contact number from my phone. These were not acts of rage. They were acts of removal. Mothers are not required to keep bleeding just because the knife came from inside the house. I made tea that night. Sat on the fire escape. Watched the sky turn a shade of blue that felt like breath. And said it out loud just once. I didn't forgive. I just turned off the sound. They started looking once they realized I wasn't bluffing. First it was small things. Michael called the neighbors. Left voicemails. Have you seen my mom? We're just worried. Polite concern from a son who'd already filed me under extras. Then came the emails. The ones that said, we miss you, and please let's talk. Always we. As if the collective voice of the ones who shut the door now carried more weight than mine alone. I didn't respond. I didn't block them either. Some silences work better when they echo. Eventually they tried legal paths. A notice came to my old address. Michael's handwriting on the envelope, but typed inside was a request for financial clarification. He'd realized the trust fund I once promised Dylan wasn't in his name anymore. Of course it wasn't. I'd moved it. Legally. Quietly. Months ago. A female clerk from the county office called me to confirm. Just double-checking your intention to update your executor and beneficiaries? She asked. Yes, I said. Fully intentional. She hesitated. We don't often see full removals of family without replacements. I smiled. Sometimes subtraction is the most merciful math. By then, the florist below my room had learned my name. You've got that settled kind of stillness, she said one morning as she handed me mail. Like a pond? I asked. She nodded. Like someone who stopped waiting to be invited. That same week, a message slipped through on Dylan's old number. It wasn't him. It was Michael. Where did you go? I didn't answer. Instead, I stood in the middle of the small apartment, surrounded by silence and soft light, and thought, you don't get to know. Because this wasn't a game of hide and seek. This was escape. And you don't give maps to people who pushed you off the edge. I opened the drawer where the new deed sat. My name only, no secondary contacts. I held it in my hands for a moment. Not for sentiment. Just to remind myself it was real. Freedom is rarely loud. It comes in paper and signatures and the sound of a phone that doesn't ring anymore. That night, I walked 3 blocks to a mailbox and dropped in a final letter. Not to them but to the attorney. Confirmation of the changes. All signed. All sealed. They would call again, I knew. They'd try to find me, try to flip guilt like a flashlight in a dark room. But I had already disappeared. And they were no longer the ones holding the switch. It's a Sunday now. Morning. Soft light filtering through linen curtains. The kind of morning where nothing demands your name. I bake. Not for anyone. Not for birthdays or reunions or proving I'm still useful. Just because my hands wanted to do something warm. The kitchen smells like cinnamon and apples. I open the window, let the air drift in. Somewhere downstairs, the florist is arranging sunflowers. I hear a snip, a gentle hum of a song I don't recognize. I sit with my coffee, fresh pie on the sill, and my notebook open beside me. No lists today. No reminders. Just one sentence underlined twice. Sometimes love is just the absence of needing to explain yourself. I don't check my phone. It's not off. It just lives in a drawer now. Not as a lifeline. Just as a tool I don't need most days. Michael hasn't called in weeks. The silence isn't angry anymore. It's not thick with waiting. It's become neutral. Like a room emptied of furniture swept clean. There's nothing to walk around. I think about Dylan sometimes. What stories he's being told. If they're calling me stubborn or unstable or distant. But then I remember. If they need to make me a villain to justify exclusion, I was never safe among them to begin with. That's the thing no one tells you about leaving, especially as a mother. They expect a storm, a final explosion. But sometimes all it takes is stillness, the kind they can't explain. Because people don't fear your anger, they fear your absence. Later, I slice the pie and walk a piece down to the woman at the flower shop. She opens the door in her apron, surprised. "For me?" she asks. "For the kindness," I say. She smiles, the kind that doesn't ask questions. Back upstairs, I light a small candle and place it by the window. Not for memory, for presence. Because I am here. Still. Unapologetically. Not the version of me they used. The one I chose. I don't need an audience. Or a reconciliation script. Or another chance to be misunderstood. They stopped talking the second I did. And I stayed quiet. Because I wasn't punishing them. I was freeing myself. The pie cools. The candle flickers. A breeze moves the curtain slightly. And I think, I didn't vanish. I simply stopped being available for pain. That's not revenge. That's peace. Been through it? When they crossed a line and you made sure they felt it.